Welcome to the Deep Dive. Today we're really immersing ourselves in, well, what's still pretty much uncharted territory for a lot of places, making that company-wide shift to remote work sustainable and, successful. This isn't just about getting people working from home anymore. It's about building genuinely high-performing remote organizations for the long haul. So our mission here is to give you a kind of structural blueprint. We've sifted through our sources, pulled out the most actionable stuff, and we've broken it down into three key areas. The company level, that's leadership, then the team level communication, and finally, the individual level discipline. So whether you're leading the whole show, managing a team, or just trying to be effective working remotely yourself, you should walk away with a much clearer idea of where to focus.
Yeah, and the context is just so critical here. I mean, remote work obviously has these huge potential upsides, right? Like real focus on deliverables, escaping the noise of the open office,
Yeah.
saving all that commute time. But it boils down to one massive challenge.
Yeah.
You completely lose that organic, spontaneous interaction, that sort of water cooler chat, the quick desk drop by. And that loss, it immediately hits your communication velocity and relationship building too, actually.
Communication velocity. Can you unpack that a little?
Sure. It's basically the speed and the efficiency that information moves around and problems get solved across all the channels people use. So if clarifying something simple takes, say, 3 emails over 2 days, when before it was maybe a 30-second chat in the hallway, well, you've got a velocity problem. That lack of organic interaction, that's really the fundamental thing we have to consciously, design solutions for.
Okay, yeah, let's dig into that. Our sources really emphasize that this friction, it's not just about like glitchy video calls. It's those subtle things we lose, isn't it? Missing the side conversations that used to happen over the cubicle wall, not being able to read body language when things get a bit tense, or even just sensing the power dynamics in a room that often shape how a decision actually lands.
Exactly. And that just gets magnified when you try to do complex collaboration remotely. It's almost universally noted how much tougher it is to run a really good, fast brainstorming session over video. You just lose that quick back and forth, people talking over each other a bit, sparking ideas off one another spontaneously. It's incredibly hard to replicate that perfectly when everyone's waiting to unmute.
That difficulty is definitely real. But let's look at the flip side. Our sources point out the opportunity. All that time saved, not commuting. The thinking seems to be, well, maybe remote employees can use that extra hour or two a day for more structured communication, more deliberate messaging with colleagues. If we can't have the spontaneous stuff, can we get the same velocity by just dedicating more time to talking?
It's a compelling thought, definitely. But we should probably inject a little caution there. If you just tell people to talk more, doesn't that risk just creating, well, noise?
Yeah.
And maybe even burnout because the digital workday just stretches out.
Right.
Yeah, the consensus we found is that this time really needs to go into structured communication. That means, showing up to that 9 a.m. stand-up fully prepped, using the afternoon for really high-quality asynchronous updates, not just firing off more Slack messages that aren't essential. It needs protocol.
And that protocol, that structure, it really has to start right at the top, doesn't it? So
Yeah.
Connecting this to the bigger picture, the leadership view, the company level, the focus has to shift dramatically towards, well, radical clarity. Business goals are still key, obviously customers first. But leadership needs to make this huge extra effort to make sure expectations are absolutely crystal clear for every single team. Because, yeah, nobody can just pop by the CEO's office anymore.
Exactly. And that clarity needs to go deeper than just the mission statement. The sources really stress setting clear rules around how work actually gets done, like mandatory documentation standards for all key decisions. If it wasn't written down and shared widely, it basically didn't happen. Leadership also needs to define that boundary between asynchronous and synchronous work. When is it okay to send an email or a Slack and expect a delay versus when does something absolutely need an immediate Zoom or a phone call? Setting those parameters, that's an executive leadership job.
Okay, and crucially, there's this idea of critical coverage. The flexibility of remote work is great, right? Walking the dog at 2 p.m., long lunch. But operationally, that's also its biggest potential weakness. That flexibility can easily create these unintended gaps in really critical areas. Customer support, systems monitoring, if schedules aren't properly, coordinated. So this needs specific mechanisms from leadership, not just saying, please keep an eye on things. What practical steps did the sources suggest leaders can actually implement? Make sure the lights stay on, so to speak. Well, the main mechanism seems to be mandatory core hours combined with some kind of centralized, transparent schedule tracking tool. So leadership might define, say, a 4-hour window, maybe 10 a.m. to 2 p.m., where everyone is expected to be logged in,
Mm-hmm.
available for synchronous chat or calls, regardless of their flexible start or end time.
And if someone does need to step away during those core hours for an appointment, it absolutely have to be logged in that central tool. So coverage gaps or potential gaps are immediately visible to the whole team. And beyond that, managers probably need some new tools and maybe extra training. Specifically, things like employee engagement software came up.
Oh, interesting. Not just for surveys.
No, not just for the annual survey. We found examples where it's used almost to monitor communication velocity more regularly. They're tracking actual data points. How often are people messaging across teams? How many contributions are in public channels versus private DMs? What's the average response time for questions? It gives managers a data-driven look at team cohesion, not just gut feel.
That's fascinating. A whole other layer of insight. So if leaders need to be transparent and accessible, what other rituals did the sources suggest beyond, the usual all-hands meeting?
The big one seems to be setting up executive office hours. But it needs a specific structure to work well remotely. It shouldn't just be a free-for-all town hall. It needs to be a scheduled slot, maybe, say, 90 minutes every couple of weeks, where executives are available almost like a virtual queue.
Like a queue.
Yeah, employees sign up for maybe a 10-minute slot. They get to ask a direct question, maybe something sensitive, one-on-one with an exec.
Okay.
And the second key ritual that came up was mandatory transparency through a company-wide communications channel, like a dedicated internal blog or platform. Key initiative leaders have to submit weekly status reports there, and crucially, get executive feedback publicly on that platform. It helps break down silos and keeps everyone informed on major projects.
Okay, this is where it gets really interesting, I think. As we shift down to the team level, where the rubber really meets the road. If leadership provides the clarity, the team has to execute the routine, right? And our sources hammer home the importance of keeping a really productive meeting cadence. You have to host meetings just like you would in the office. Delaying or canceling them when you're remote, it doesn't come across as flexible. It just looks disorganized, and it immediately starts to impact deadlines.
Absolutely. And this connects directly to that principle we mentioned. Sharing enough information is more important than word economy. You have to over-communicate context in a remote setting. The basic rule for teams should be use your shared channels, Slack, Teams, whatever you use them as much as humanly possible. Default to public within the team. That way, everyone gets the benefit of the discussion. Everyone has access to the full context they might need for their own work.
Okay, but hang on. If we're over-communicating context and pushing everything into public channels, doesn't that just create an insane amount of noise? We're trying to fix information silos, sure, but we could end up creating information overload instead. How did the sources suggest teams filter that?
That's a really smart question, and the answer seems to lie in being very clear about the exceptions. When not to use the public channel, you absolutely should avoid small group chats or one-on-one threads unless the conversation is genuinely confidential, like HR stuff, personal issues.
Okay.
Or the only other exception is if it's an immediate, non-archivable troubleshooting thing, like, hey, the server's down, let's jump on a quick call. Something that truly won't benefit anyone else later. But if you're talking project scope or budget or a customer problem, that context belongs to the whole team. If your default is private DMs for that stuff, you're basically hoarding context.
Right, that's a good line. Confidential or immediate non-archivable troubleshooting. That makes sense. So beyond the channels, how do teams replace those informal chats? The morning coffee catch-up that kind of sets the tone.
Rituals. Again, it comes back to routines. The sources are really strong advocates for standard, brief routines. The 9 a.m. stand-up meeting Zoom or Slack, that's kind of the baseline. But importantly, if someone can't make it synchronously, their routine has to be posting their top 3 priorities for the day and any roadblocks they foresee before that meeting starts in the team channel.
So there's still accountability.
Exactly. Continuous accountability. And another really interesting idea for replacing that informal office buzz, an optional, continuous, team-wide Zoom session. Now, this is crucial. It's only for people who aren't constrained by bandwidth, but it just runs all day, like an open video channel.
So you don't have to talk.
No, you don't have to talk.
Nice.
But you can just quickly drop in, ask a question without having to schedule a formal meeting, get that sort of low-friction feeling of being, virtually close.
And we can't forget relationship building, right? The happy hour's gone, the hallway laughs are gone. Teams need to get creative. What specific virtual team building things seemed most effective in the material?
They definitely need to be structured and explicitly non-work related. Some examples were things like organized virtual coffee lotteries. Two random people from the department get paired up automatically for a scheduled 15-minute non-work chat.
Okay.
Another was structured personal storytelling during lunchtime. Not just sharing funny YouTube clips, though that can be okay, but maybe asking everyone to share one surprising non-work fact about themselves once a week. You're essentially trying to replace organic relationship building with, well, engineered emotional investment.
Engineered emotional investment. I like that framing. Okay, let's bring the focus right back to you, the individual listener. Success here really seems to boil down to personal discipline and having the right tools, but using them the right way. On the tools side, what was the most sort of practical, really actionable tech tip you found for just the average employee?
Honestly, the most overlooked ones seem to be establishing technical redundancy. Simple stuff. Install your common communication apps, Zoom, Slack, Teams, whatever. Install them on both your laptop and your phone.
Why both?
Because if your company VPN suddenly starts throttling your video quality on your laptop, or worse, your laptop just crashes mid-meeting, you can instantly switch. Join from your phone using mobile data. It maintains continuity, minimizes delays. It's a simple backup.
That is smart. Yeah. Okay, and communication shortcuts. Our sources were explicit. A short phone call is not an excessive interruption remotely. Why the phone call over, say, an instant message?
Because the phone call is the closest remote equivalent to that quick drop-by conversation you used to have at someone's desk. It transmits tone, urgency, nuance instantly. A complex back and forth that might take 8 Slack messages over 20 minutes, creating noise and maybe ambiguity. A 60-second phone call can often achieve the exact same result with 0 ambiguity. It's frequently the fastest path to resolution. Adding your phone number to your Slack profile or your email signature, it's kind of a signal that you prioritize clarity over just sticking to one platform. And for the individual, yes, self-discipline and structure are just paramount. You really have to try and stick to your normal daily routine as much as possible. Get dressed like you're going to work. Resist that strong urge to delay meetings or push tasks off until later.
And being transparent yourself about issues is key, right?
Yeah.
Because it helps the whole team. You need to flag problems or slowdowns to your manager or team lead right away. Don't sit there struggling with something for 3 hours before telling anyone. When you raise a red flag about a roadblock, you're not complaining. You're giving everyone else a chance to adjust their own plans if needed.
Precisely. It's about the collective workflow.
And finally, breaks. We saw a lot supporting breaks. The sources strongly recommend finding time to actually step away from the screen for, say, 10 minutes every couple of hours. Why the specific emphasis on that short break in the remote world?
Because the remote environment naturally encourages what you might call desk gluing. Unlike the office, where you naturally get up, walk to the kitchen, chat for a minute, those little breaks are built in.
Right, you don't have those micro breaks anymore.
Exactly, so you have to schedule them. Those short, structured breaks, they interrupt the cycle of cognitive fatigue. They're actually proven to boost productivity and help you maintain focus over longer stretches. It's really an act of self-management that directly impacts your work quality. And that leads perfectly into the 2 really vital self-reflection questions that the sources suggest every successful remote employee should ask themselves at the end of each day. 1. Was I as productive today remotely as I would have been in the office? And if the answer is no, you need to honestly analyze why. What broke down in your routine? And 2, are all my critical communications done? Meaning, did I share everything I needed to? Did I document what needed documenting? Or did I, maybe accidentally, hoard some context today?
So what does this all boil down to? I mean, ultimately what we've distilled here is that success really happens when these 3 layers, company, team, individual, click into alignment. The company needs to provide that radical clarity and ensure critical coverage. Teams have to execute with open communication and those engineered rituals. And individuals, you have to bring the self-discipline and use the tools effectively, including that technical redundancy.
Yeah, the synthesis is pretty clear, I think. The framework for success is definitely there. If companies, teams, and individuals are all diligent about keeping operational clarity, communication velocity, and personal structure high, then remote workforces can absolutely match and often significantly beat the productivity of traditional in-office setups.
Okay, so here's a final thought for you to take away. If we agree that losing that organic, spontaneous interaction is the core challenge, what are maybe the 3 most surprising metrics companies are starting to use to measure relationship strength remotely? When they can't rely on just watching people chat in the hallway, Think about measuring those human connections, not just task completion. And then maybe think about which specific low-tech substitutions we talked about, like that quick phone call replacing the drop-by, or the disciplined 10-minute break. Which one could you pilot starting tomorrow to give your own team's communication a little boost? Thanks for diving in with us today.